So today we're making a brand new tier list, ranking every meta unit in Anime Expeditions as of the game's release. Keep in mind the rankings in this video are just my own opinion, but I still hope you found the video helpful. If you do, maybe leave a like or subscribe. But anyways, let's get into it. Alright, hello guys, we have a brand new game today, Anime Expeditions. We're making a tier list for it. I'm gonna apologize in advance if I'm a little bit bad at talking in this video. I'm recording this at 4 in the morning, my sleep schedule has been fried, okay, I don't know. But we have a brand new tier list here. I'm confident it should be pretty accurate. We have a good amount of categories to go over here, so meta overall, meta DPS, good DPS, summoner, stall support, so like units that slow down enemies, and buff support, so units that buff each other. And then farms I already got out of the way. I think Senku is better than Ramen Guy overall. But to kind of ease us into the format here, the new tier list, I have a couple less importance we're going to rank first. So these two units right here, Himmel and the JJK Lady, pretty much the exact same unit, but the JJK Lady is a magic buffer and Himmel is a physical buffer. So they buff their respective element by 5% per upgrade. I think it caps out at 30%. So they're pretty okay damage buffers right now. Rukia has the freeze effect, so she's going into the stall support category, as she stalls enemies by freezing them. Then the Epic Ice Mage, which I happen to have the best trait in the game on, was the most tragic thing to ever happen in my Anime Expeditions life. He's going into the stall support category just like Rukia. He has a 50% slow effect every attack with a 5-second cooldown, and the effect itself lasts for 5 seconds, so I think it's pretty good uptime. And then for Toy Maker, she's going into the Summoner category. I know a lot of people haven't really seen the info for this unit yet because she comes out in a couple days with the tournament. But you can actually check her out right now, the Expedition game mode, if you get lucky and she's like in your checkpoint. That's what I did. And she's a pretty good summoner. That's all she does. She doesn't attack, she just summons stuff in her range. As you upgrade her, the toys get like stronger. I don't know. All she has is a bunch of summons pretty much. She is a simple summoner. She'll probably be pretty good in a couple days once we can pick her up for free. Now with these like lesser important units out of the way, hopefully that kind of shows an example of what these three categories are, because I know I've never really had categories like this on the tier list before. So we can get into the crazy meta units here. Starting off very strong with Megumi, Shadow Divine, the Banner Seeker unit. This guy is definitely the top 1 unit in the game, going to the top of meta overall. Pretty sure he also has the highest DPS in the game with all his summons combined, so going into the top of meta DPS. He is of course a summoner, he's got his wolf, he's got a New Way which does have stun, so it does put him into the stall support. He does have Maharaga as well. Maharaga also can like teleport around, do good damage, and has stun. And he does have an ability, his Domain, which can rewind enemies and buff your magic units in range, so he is also a buffer. Overall, this unit can kind of do everything, if that wasn't made clear with how much I just said about him. And then his Relic buffs his New Way summon. If I remember correctly, this guy is Inumaki. Pretty much his entire gimmick, his main thing is being a stall support. He has 20% slow on every attack, and then anything entering his range also gets like stunned for a little bit. Interesting thing about this guy's personal equipment though, his own like little relic, it doesn't just buff his passive, it kind of like completely changes it. So instead of having a 20% slow on all attacks, he gets like a different amount of slow based on how many upgrades he has. So max upgrade he has 65%. I think if you do have him evolved and with his own relic, he definitely is going into the meta overall. Very good support unit right now. You definitely want to run him on your team if you can. Next we have Yuta, which is another really strong unit going into the meta overall. Yuta pretty much just has really crazy DPS with the bleed, and when he applies a certain amount of bleed, he spawns in little bat summons to make him do even more damage. And then every few attacks he has like a follow-up mechanic where he's going to follow up attack based on his own damage, but based on the AoE of the closest unit to him, so like, and his custom relic buffs his bat summoning passive. But yeah, overall a very strong unit, mostly because he is a strong DPS and a pretty strong summoner. Doflamingo just kinda okay for DPS. But this guy works is like when he attacks a certain amount of times, he's going to apply Cocoon onto enemies, which will kind of debuff them. And then for nearby units, he applies like a little string onto them, which gives them a follow-up attack. But the follow-up attack is based on his own damage. So it's not really a buff, it's kind of just like giving him more DPS by applying to other units in his range. He is a good DPS unit, definitely very good on placement too. If you're like a brand new player and you roll this guy, don't be sad. Because he's very good for like early story for sure. I guess I should also say this guy is a stall support because his like Cocoon will stun enemies, you know. But he does have to attack them 5 times to Cocoon them, so it's kind of questionable if he's really a support or not. I don't know. And then his personal equipment just makes his Cocoon passive stronger. Next up, Ichigo. And this guy is really hard to get. He's from the raid, so I don't know if I'd even recommend grinding for him. But he is pretty good. I put him into good DPS, he's pretty usable. Pretty much when he attacks like different types of enemies, he will kind of ramp up. Then when he crits, he'll also decrease his SPA to kind of ramp up even more. But then his main gimmick is that he has clones he kind of spawns in with like his ability, and those clones have 50% of his damage. And if an enemy tries to debuff him, he can kind of TP to the clone instead and not get debuffed. Overall, just kind of an okay DPS unit. His passives are cool, but he's not very strong right now. At least not in like the top 5. And his equipment buffs his ramping up passive with his like different enemy modifier thing. Go through. This guy is pretty OP right now. I'd say he's probably the number 2 overall. I really think this guy is strong. Some people argue that Yuta's better, but I don't know. I think Go Through has a lot going for him right now. Definitely going into meta DPS, but not the highest in the category. But this unit also has summons pretty much. Like every 15 seconds he will apply a mark onto stuff, the strongest enemy in his range, to make them take more damage. When that enemy dies, he will spawn a summon of them. Then he also has an ability that can rewind stuff, so I don't know, he has a lot going for him. Of course has stall from the rewind I just mentioned, and a little bit of buffing I would say. I'd count it as buffing because like he applies a debuff onto the enemies that makes them take more damage, so kind of buffing your allies, but I don't know. Overall this unit has a lot of utility, and his relic buffs his little like summon thing by the way. Lady Giant, mostly just a really good DPS unit. She has an active ability where she goes into like giant form and does a lot more damage for a bit. But she also places down little stone walls on the track that just have a little bit of her damage. And every attack she builds up these little rock chunks, and when she gets 4 of them she does a follow-up attack, which is just kind of some extra DPS, pretty good. And her personal relic buffs her wall, so she's just kind of okay for DPS. Gabby Maru. This guy's a little bit weird. He's a burn unit, and his passives are like a burn support almost. I don't know, you could argue this guy's a support, but I wouldn't really say so. What he does is like when there's an enemy with burn in his range, he converts one of the burns into his own form of burn, which is a little bit stronger I think. And then when he attacks a burning enemy, he also converts one burn. So I don't know, that's kind of all he does is like converts burn into his own burn, which is a little bit stronger. Overall he's like okay, you compare him with the next guy we're about to talk about for some pretty good DPS I guess with burn. And his equipment by the way affects his first passive. Whenever the burn stops ticking in his range, it reapplies whatever. Flame Emperor, this guy is a burn unit, and his entire thing is pretty much just that he has burn. So I don't know, you can maybe pair him with Hollow Blaze for some okay DPS, but even if you use them both, really nothing that good. So they're okay for DPS. Flame Emperor, his entire thing is just that he has burn and applies it onto people that don't have burn, so it's just burn. All he does is burn. A pretty crazy unit here, Kenpachi. This guy is definitely going to meta overall, and he is a very good DPS unit. His passives, he has like an aura around him that makes enemies take damage when they're close enough. Then when something tries to stun him, he cleanses it and does a follow-up attack. And his follow-up attacks apply Dismembered, which is a really good stats effect for stalling. This guy's definitely going into the stall support category too. Then when an enemy goes below 10% health, he's going to follow-up attack on them. And after 25 takedowns, he goes into like a little rage mode. Overall, it's a really good unit. I think this guy is pretty crazy. Worth the grind? I don't really know, because like he's from the Act 3 Bleach raid. Really hard to solo farm, so good luck. But he definitely is very strong. And his relic, by the way, is actually going to buff 2 of his passives. The Aura one and the Anti-Stun one. And then Freerin. I really like this unit's model, I want to say that. I think this is like one of the best Freerin models we've ever seen. For like non-copyright. It just kind of looks cool. I like the whole little mimic hoodie going on. But personally, I would say Freerin is a meta DPS, kind of towards the lower end though. I've seen a lot of people say she could be higher or lower, I don't know. With these like DPS mythics is kind of, they each have like a little bit of wiggle room. So I don't know, if you have your own opinion on it, let me know. But Freerin, pretty much her whole thing is she builds up charge that lets her use these spells, and the spells are pretty much just follow-up attacks, so her whole thing is follow-up attacks, and she's pretty good for DPS. She also can be full AoE before even being evolved, so it does kind of help out if you're like struggling in the story. And her relic is going to buff her follow-up attack passive. The free unit, if you log in during release, or if you AFK in the AFK chamber for the shiny one. I've seen a lot of people say this unit is kind of crazy. I personally disagree. I think she's just kind of good. Her main gimmick is like she applies a mark onto stuff, where whenever she crits, she's going to take away that mark and do 10% of her damage. And then also, every upgrade she has gives her 2% crit rate, so pretty okay for crit. But I don't know, her overall damage isn't very high, which I guess is why she has an ability that lets her steal 20% of the 3 strongest units in her range. The problem with that ability, and why I kind of disagree with people saying it makes her meta, it doesn't directly like create more damage, because it actually like takes away the damage from the units in her range whenever she uses the ability. They don't just like give her their damage, she takes it, they lose damage when she uses it. So pretty much the only benefit of like having her take someone else's damage is to give it crit. At the same time, like if you max upgrade her, she only has a base like 20% crit rate, and you kind of have to rely on a crit trait for that. I just don't see the vision for now. I think she's an okay DPS unit, and she is really easy to evolve, so I mean you might as well if you're kind of a new player. And then finally we have Choso, the Battle Pass unit. I actually think this guy is pretty similar to True Saint, but he is better for DPS, so going into meta DPS instead of just good. He's pretty good for DPS overall. Pretty much on attack he's going to apply a Crimson Mark. That mark is going to detonate after a certain amount of time and do 15% of his damage. And then when that mark does detonate, he leaves a pool of blood on the floor that does like a little bit of his DPS when enemies walk through it. Overall, pretty good raw damage from it. And then he has an ability as well, which he can't attack during, but it's kind of like a nuke, a channeled one. Kind of just shoots a blood laser with pretty good DPS, I think that's 75% of his damage per second. And he will inflict the enemies with crimson marks as well during the ability. So I don't know, pretty good raw damage unit with a nuke. I think that is every meta-relevant unit in the game right now, so I think the tier list is done. That is all for the unit rankings. I'm sure there's stuff on the list you disagree with that might be wrong or might be subject to change in the future, so feel free to let me know what you think in the comments down below. Otherwise though, personally I think it's pretty accurate. Either way, thank you to my channel members for making the video possible. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day.